Yo, what's up, guys? What up, Roman? Welcome to the party. Welcome to the casa. Over here working on a few weapons for these rebels. What you guys up to? How's the shop going? We got Big Roman in the house. Shout out legends. Support your local store. Yeah, man, Roman's no chill with the kids. I was trying to stream this on Disney Plus, but I can't anymore, Roman. Thanks. What's up, Sir JR? I got this guy. I think I'm gonna have to live stream paint this dude here. I have a cool scheme for him to make him look medieval. Commander Cody. Yeah, once I get a little bit more familiarized with the streaming, I want to just kind of pop in and just do random live streams while I paint some of the things that are on the shelf. So the theme for these guys, they have that Desert Storm vibe going on. Last time I started them, they had that. It's kind of like the Desert Storm colors, but I think I'm gonna go with calling them the Red Squad. I'm gonna do accents of red for their like this guy's goggles and some of the hats, some like details. How about those jerseys though? People at LVO, they're not ready to see those jerseys. You guys are gonna look like you're ready for anything. Yeah, you guys are gonna look like those big time gamers you see going to Vegas. You better not take that shirt off either. Like, wear that jersey all weekend. All musky and all sorts of stains and sweat. I figure those jerseys are going to fit a little tight when you get them, so you got to break them in, man. You got to wear them on the way to Vegas, at Vegas, on the way back from Vegas. And hopefully it's still one piece. Just get to the tournament, concede round one, get all your free stuff, walk out winning. It's a win-win situation. I don't call you the Legend Boys for nothing. Yeah, it'd be cool to go enter a few painted miniatures, but dude, I can't even go unless you take the miniatures for me. And you could just be like, yeah, I painted them. As long as the judges don't tell you, like, all right, prove it. Here's a bare miniature, paint it. Live paint and go. That's what you're gonna do, JR. You got what? You got weeks, man. You can start painting now. I'm on a quest to get JR to paint. I think Jose and I are just gonna strap you down and just give you all the supplies and be like, here, JR, you gotta paint. How's that list, Roman? Did you try out? Have you been playing the? What are you running for LVO? You got that list ready? You gotta start playing those bounties. It's easy to paint. I want to motivate more people, especially the newer guys that are coming to the shop, and I'll see at the other game stores and whatnot, motivate others to start painting more. And like you said, it is easy. You just have to, not get frustrated with yourself. And you'd be surprised, you don't even know what you're capable of doing until you try it. So it's best thing to do is get the paintbrush, dip and rip. I know a few guys that started a little late into the hobby and they want to get into miniature painting, and they have no art background whatsoever, and these guys are like, I started painting, but I kind of gave up as soon as just as fast as I started. I'm like, well, why? And the reason that they told me was because they were too hard on themselves. So the background was they did not have any kind of experience in painting or any kind of form of art. They're just kind of like, all right, I'm just gonna try it, and automatically off the beginning they're just so hard on themselves. They were too critical, and they just unmotivated themselves. I'm like, well, don't let that happen to you. I guess we could be our own worst critic, but we can't let that be a factor for us not to paint. Is just because you get frustrated and we're like, this should be it's more of a chill thing to do. I gotta come out Wednesday for hobby building nights and paint nights. That'd be fun. I think a lot of issue, and we're all guilty of it, we want results fast. When it comes to a lot of things with the hobby. So what's the first thing you do when you buy a miniature, like a unit? You look at the box, you look at the art. It's kind of like back in the days when you go to the old VHS stores and you see the old 90s VHS print that you, like that box cover art. And that's what sells the movie sometimes, because you see Total Recall, and then it just looks like this amazing art, and you're like, I want to watch that movie. I don't even know what it's about. I just want to watch it. And you watch it, you might have had high expectations, or it might meet what you thought it would have been. Same thing, we go to the hobby store, you get a new unit, you take it home, or you're starting to assemble it, and then you get to the painting and you're like, okay, what does the box art look like? Because that's what I want to do. And I think I had this conversation with Jose when we first got together. I saw his miniatures and I was like, I like how you just went with your own theme, and that's what it's about, You can get the box art and try to, paint that heavy metal style, Warhammer style, where everything is just like the box. Or you just make your own color scheme, and make that be as eye-appealing as it is on the box. That golden angle, and I think that's cool. But yeah, we want results right away, and we start painting, you don't see them, and that can be frustrating. So I could see why a lot of people kind of quit there. They're just like, no, it's not really turning out the way I want it to be, so I'm just gonna put this down and I'm gonna keep gaming. And then all of a sudden you just pile and upon pile of these miniatures that are unpainted. But we're all guilty of that. I'm just saying it's easier to knock out some minis, units at a time, and then not go according to the box art that you pick up, and you're just like, I want to make it look like this. Well, why don't you make it look like something else? Find an inspiration from a movie, watch Predator, and make your unit look like the Marines, or make them look like Predator aliens, like a sci-fi scheme. This was the inspiration for these guys. It's like Desert Storm kind of guys. I saw that like Commando Ranger look. Here's one of the aliens that I ended up finishing, which is cool because I've seen people convert this guy as, they put him in the bus, just the head, and they make him the field commander. I thought that was a cool idea. But, I think I had another one, and I did the blue scheme, which you usually see on the box art, just because I was like, alright, let's attempt to do the box art colors. And so I went ahead and did everybody was pretty matching with the greens and the whole traditional rebel look. But yeah, branch off, get your own color schemes, try to make your squad different from what you would be, not just, okay, I'm gonna paint them all the same, but then just have the color coordinate their, their bases or something. Give a little more with the imagination approach. Give it that sci-fi look. I am a big fan of the way Star Wars does their art with illustrated books or the comics, and they give that. If you realize, not a lot of guns in Star Wars are shiny. Everything just has like that gunmetal flat look. So I'm a fan of that. That's pretty cool. These guys are already all based. Um, I'm just kind of moving up before I start doing highlights and doing some more of the recess shading. I just figured, you know what, let's do their packs now. I have a cool idea for the backpacks. What year is the Warhammer boxes that you have that are from, is it like the beginner paint boxes or is it the new AOS stuff? The 90s. You have to reactivate the paint with some sort of thinner and shake it. That'd be funny to try to redo the kind of like emulate the paint from back in the days, because they used to have those like chalky paint. It would dry up within a week that you bought it. I'm really I'm really impressed with all the new brands that are out there, how they hold up with how true they you can like have them on the shelf for a while and they seal up really good. I think that was the issue with the original Citadel bottles, is the shelf life sucked. So you buy one, you take it home, and then you open it, so air gets in there, and then you try to close it, it didn't seal right, or the formula was off, and all of a sudden you maybe try to paint like within the month and it's already drying. So you have to sometimes get a toothpick to scrape off that top layer, and that's like pretty much the whole bottle. Nowadays, Army Painter does really good with their whatever formula they use. I know I've used a lot of glazes and washes to dilute certain things, or just water, but it's good to it's nice that they keep it consistent with the paint's not drying out in the pots. These I'm using, I think the ones that are similar, well, these have been around for a while, the P3s. And they used to give you, like you said, in the 90s, they would give you those little tiny pots. I think I know what models you're talking about. Is it the ones that they're labeled like F09 or something, and it looks like it's straight out of the Games Workshop? Was it White Dwarf? It's like those old school, the ones you would use for like Warhammer Quest, things like that. I think those are the models you're talking about, right? I have quite a few collection of those models. Those are cool. So, what's your guys' formula? What do you guys do when painting? Do you you guys have a recipe that you guys stick to, as far as kind of like what I mentioned. If you see the box art and you're just like, okay, I'm gonna try to replicate that box art, or I'm gonna, try this scheme, or what's your guys' formula? That's what I'm curious. I like to know everybody's kind of like the go-to, or get them in the zone, things like that. I know I spoke to a few people and you guys were like, man, it's so hard to paint with time, with work, um, with your, a little bit of downtime that you have, that me time. It's tough. I get it. And I think I explained about not dumping all your ink if you know you, or your whatever pigments you're going to use. Kind of, all right, I only have 30-40 minutes to paint. I'm not going to pull out my whole palette. I'm just going to focus on one thing. And that's what I'm kind of doing now. I figured, okay, I have these guys, their clothing's done. I can start working on details. I'm not going to pressure anything. I'm not going to stress anything out about time frame, unless I have to get these painted for the weekend. Then I'm like, all right. And for instance, like, we're in holiday time, so I'm like, okay, I got a game Saturday, and I know Thanksgiving's tomorrow. I'm like, all right, I got to get through these models. After a long day, it's tough, or whatever time you do have, we can easily fall in that lazy pit and just be like, all right, I'm gonna hobby. You get home, you're just like, I'm just gonna chill. I get it. It's hard. It's tough. And so for the longest, when we're doing the Escalation League, my models were very base layer, level 1 status. But they were, if I were to take them to like a big size tournament, they would make the cut. But from the artist standpoint, we want to have some cool stuff to show off, and maybe we want to start adding to it. And I know it's gonna bug you if you're like, I know I could do better. These are very just stage 1 still, but I need to play, and they'll do for now. But finding time sucks. But when you do sit down and you paint, I'm curious what people do, as far as, all right, I'm gonna set this goal. I'm gonna knock out at least X amount of steps for my miniature, and just try to accomplish it. I know some people that just pump hours through the weekend, and man, that's awesome. But life hits, and when it hits hard. Hey man, I like screen accurate, don't get me wrong. I've seen some custom stuff that you guys have done, and it's pretty awesome when you kind of go off off your own, I guess, representation of the model, and then that falls back into the lines of the hobby. It is a hobby, so it's not like someone's the competition. It's fun to be competitive, we all get competitive. We have the competitive side, but then there's inspiring, motivation, and like motivating each other. That's pretty awesome. I got to give a shout out to a lot of the guys. Let me see here. I got a list. So far, since we've been gaming, I've been playing with Toby a lot, and he showed me one of the miniatures that he attempted. He said, look man, this is the one I actually painted myself, and he said, I'm proud of this miniature. And he showed me which it was. I can't remember if it was I think it might have been like either a bounty miniature or Mando or something, but he painted a miniature himself, and he was really stoked, and that was great. So shout outs to Toby for, he's not a painter, he attempted it, and he's proud of what he did. And it's like, I guarantee you, he didn't even know he was capable of doing that. Roman showed me a lot of the stuff he's done. That is, that's another thing that's like inspiring, that just be like, man, these guys are just get at it, get after it, because we can easily stack all these model projects on our table, and we're like, all right, I just bit off a little more than I can chew. Jose, Jose has the sickest setup at his house, and I'm trying to move in, man. I'm trying to like paint in that room. I'll just pay rent for that little space and call it a day. But he's got some cool stuff that he's painted in the shelf, like stuff that's in the glass and display, and that's pretty dope. Um, Gabe, you've done a lot of stuff yourself that I've seen. I don't know, and some of these guys might not even be on the stream, but I just want to put it out there. Like, Gabe has done a lot of the cool stuff, especially for his own game that he has coming up. I saw Caleb when he played Daniel. Caleb had some pretty cool miniatures that he painted for his faction. Chris, obviously, Chris is knocking out a lot of cool stuff and doing also commissions for people. That's pretty awesome. It feels good to have your art displayed when others play it. It's kind of like me doing permanent art on everybody, and now they're all walking around with my little bit of piece that I did on them. See, Noah has done some cool stuff that I've seen, and he's posted it on the chat. Shouts to Noah. We have the 3D print wizard, Edward. He's done some cool things. He's working on the troops and all those insane 3D printed stuff that he's knocking out. Recently had a game with Nick. He had a lot of cool conversions with his ATRT. I think he put that in the Discord. Another thing, he based it. Everybody's miniatures that I've seen so far. You guys go all out, which is great. Attempting the basing, putting little different things that will set it apart from getting everything from the grounds, the details. I've seen Daniel's miniatures. Obviously, a lot of us are kind of pushed to paint because we are entering the tournaments, or it all goes hand in hand with the hobby. We're building, we're playing, and we're painting. So that's one of those things that's pretty cool. Josh, the professor, he had some cool basing stuff that he showed me. I think you guys used it also. I think it was some sort of like the texture for the base, and we're just talking about different techniques using it. And that's what's awesome when you guys are at the game store, pick each other's brains. That's the way to kind of get some more ideas and whatnot. A lot of the newer guys that are coming into the shop, it'd be cool to have, like you said, they're getting into the hobby. Maybe they've painted in the past, but to see their progress also is pretty cool. I think a lot of people had that conversation that COVID kind of, the COVID times arose all these people that want to get into the hobby. They're just like, struck their curiosity, and they're like, yeah, I want to get into it, into hobbying, gaming. I also seen, I forgot to mention, I seen a cool conversion. Ian, most of you guys know Ian. He came into the shop one time, and I think he played, who did he play? He played JR, I think. And he brought out Rex, and he had this 40K backpack on him. I thought it was so cool, the jetpack. And yeah, Rex looked mean. He was like, what jetpack? He's got a whole rocket on his back. And that was a cool conversion. Plus, he was using the Turbo Dork inks, the paints, which Jose's also used them. If you guys haven't checked those out, man, I'm going to do a little bit of test with a lot of those for metallic inks and pigments, and to see which one performs at its best and gets that quality of the shine, the chrome, the metal effect. I thought that'd be a cool idea, so I got a bunch of spoons from the local fuzz spot, and I was like, you know, it'd be a cool idea. Let's just try to see, because you know, if you use too much chrome, certain inks will they will erase a lot of your detail. So some models have, I mean, I got to give it up to these guys. Their models are crazy detailed. They do really good with their quality. Um, that's one thing I think you can't really knock. The plastic may be questionable, but their molds, their sculpts are great. And the thing is that some of the stuff is so subtle that once you blast it with a chrome or the metallic shines, they they just disappear because it's so thin, and it's not enough of a risen area. So it's cool to test out before you use certain chromes and certain metallics to see how much it'll take for you to cover a surface without mudding up the area or whatever the case may be. I know we're all on the quest to have a shiny Mando, or at least a few of us are, and I'm like, hey, you know what? We gotta get some chrome effects. So I'll be right back. All right. Same thing goes with washes. When we are washing the miniatures, we're being really careful with how we're applying it. Making sure you're picking and choosing where the pools are for wash. I like the goal that if you haven't painted it yet, you can't play it. It kind of gives you a little bit of incentive to push that you have to get some ink on the brush and get to town. And my daughter's awake, so she's gonna be joining the stream. She's pissed off because she didn't sleep enough. Whenever I'm applying the washes, I try to keep the wash on one side of kind of like where the shades would be, the shadows, and then I would slowly start to pull it to the top without saturating the full miniature or the area that I'm working. So then, if it does go a little past where I would like it to be, I was just going through water, and try to, if you like, would wet blend into the shade or the shadow area, the recesses, and then kind of push that shadow back to not. I don't know if you could see. I'm gonna try to get closer. So if my shadows are in the back end of the miniature and I feel like the wash got a little too further up the arm where I want it to be more of the highlight area, I'll just get in with water, dry the brush, and then if it were to be wet blended, I go back into the shadow, pushing it back a little bit. And if I feel like I need to bring that contrast up a little more, then I'll just start from the bottom and start pulling it back up to get the miniature. It gives it that natural transition and that gradients to get it started for the midtones and highlights, especially if you're going to skip some midtones and go just shadow highlight with dry brushing, just because you're pressed for time. I feel like that's a good technique to use. So as I was mentioning, these guys are going to be kind of like a red squad of rebels, so I'm going to be painting this red just to kind of show these guys a little more different from the rest. One thing that I like about washes is while they are drying, you can see if you need to apply a little more or not. You kind of get to control it a little bit better than the harder acrylics. Like I said, my daughter is awake, so she's gonna be some background noise, some ambient noise from a 2-year-old. I'll be right back, guys. Right, we're back. All right, let's see. Let's see. So what's on the bench for you guys? What are you guys working on? Are you guys painting this week? This weekend? Are you guys using the holiday time to get some paint? Man, you about to rip that stomach up, bro. I feel like Thanksgiving and all these holidays snuck up on us. All of a sudden it's like, oh, Thanksgiving time and Christmas. I feel like after Halloween it just goes downhill. The year needs to slow down, especially if you have ongoing projects and things like that. Which which Marvel guys are you working on right now? I saw they dropped a ton of new ones. I'm a big fan of the way they did the Blade figure. That guy looks so cool. The Guardian set. How far did you get on those guys? feel like you could do a lot with painting those guardians, and plus the Marvel Crisis Protocol stuff is, man, they have some really cool sculpts on those the action shots. We'll have to see the progress of the. We have to see the progress depending on how all that looks. The if you can, just post it. See where it all is. While I'm applying the wash, I'm thinking about this. There's this image I seen of somebody using the Army Painter wash. It has it's kind of like a bigger bucket, if you will. I'm sure you guys have seen it. And some of the guys that were using it straight get their miniature and they just dip it inside the can. And I was like, man, I wonder how effective that is. I feel like just going to Home Depot and getting oil or AutoZone and just doing the same, see what kind of a turnout I get. That's a good way to make your models look like they've just been through a marsh, jungle, and didn't care to do laundry. Has anyone else used airbrush in their arsenal of tools while they paint? He said, I'm old school. No, I'm just kidding. I just started trying to hone in on the airbrush technique. It's fun, and it does cut the painting in half as far as time goes, especially if you want to use that for effects and things like that. I want to get practice using the fine detailed pin. I've been a fan of these quick shades from Army Painter. They have light tone, strong tone, and sometimes I bounce back between the both whenever I'm working on flesh. These guys they're already primered. They have, I guess, a layer of the basic flesh from scale 75, and it has like a very soft tone, and I'm just kind of focusing on bringing the details, all the recesses and things like that with darker tone, and then kind of wash it with the lighter tone, and gives it that warmth, that warm value, especially for like the female skin where it's not too dark. I mean, if you're going for speed, I think this is a pretty good technique to start. Now, obviously, if you want to kind of focus on a few of the, if you just want to knock stuff out, then you can do something of that approach where you just base coat it and then, hey, run a wash, but a skin tone wash, and then maybe let it dry, do a red, like a pure red wash, and then do a lighter tone, do some little bit of highlights. You can get really good steps out of that. That's always a good way to kind of show off more of the facial features. since I have the airbrush tool, before I start, sometimes I overspray the sheet, whatever I'm using for the wet palette. I just kind of sprayed a little bit just to get the top a little glistening and getting ready for paint, instead of me trying to use water or dilution to go into a certain area. It's already kind of spread out evenly and then it doesn't bubble up. And this is just regular parchment paper. I've used the wax stuff where you can literally just take the old acrylic and you can scrape it right off and reuse the, they have certain brands like the Red Grass Games. I think they have a really nice one that has, it's a little bit different material that you could just bend it in half, and the whatever paint dried on there will just flake right off. It's insane. But this is just parchment paper. I kind of this is the Army Painter wet palette, but what I do is I use the actual foam and I throw a paper towel over that to absorb some of the water, and then I'll put the parchment paper over it so it's a little more controlled substance, and then I'll just airbrush the top with just water until most of it is glistening, and then I know for a fact that most of it will be so when I put the whatever pigment I'm using, it'll kind of already have, it won't be so wet that I can't, it's just the consistency is too like a glaze. It's a little too wet like this, you can tell. You see, that'd be manually doing it, but once you already have it on there, it'll keep the area that you need, so that it keeps it longer without drying. That way you're able to layer out some thinner layers, thin out your paints. You'll see that if you do have, for instance, you pull out your pigment, and if the area, if this is a dry sheet, the water hasn't gotten to it yet, you'll go in and try to moisten the area up, and then you have the pigment over that, and then you just keep trying to dilute it. Well, it might thin it out too much towards when you go to your miniature. It's going to be, I mean, it depends what you're trying to go for. If you want this kind of consistency as you're painting, then you have to really regulate on this. But if you want to start glazing, you can see how quick that absorbs on the brush, and then you can tell the difference. It's super light. And this will happen if you try to add the water and you have a bigger pool. I mean, I guess if you have a pool and you're trying to drag into the area, sure, you could kind of regulate that, but it's nice to have the piece of the paper, whatever you're using, the parchment paper. This is all back to my DIY stuff. You can get like a lid, an old Tupperware lid, use that as your wet palette. So I just got used to that, even though I upgraded to the nicer Army Painter stuff. I think they have some at Legends. They come with the foam and a bunch of the nicer papers, which are kind of like waxy material, which I was talking about. You can almost like reuse them, some of them, and or these, which one-time uses. I cut out the area. You have a whole roll of them in your drawer, and it absorbs pretty well. The water gets the retention's, it's pretty nice. Let me see if I get some ink on there to show you. Like just any cooking parchment paper, you can see the glaze or the consistency of the fluid, and it stays in this pool. And if I go and put in a solid color here, and I'm trying to regulate the, like let's say I'm trying to figure this out. I have a thicker pour, and you know you need to thin out your paint for a layer, and you're gonna pull it into the pool. Sometimes if now it starts to drag into that, now it's a little too wet, and you can't use this layer. It'd be a little too thin for a base. That'd be good for glazing, but you could, I don't know, you can't really see it on the camera, but It's not the consistency I'm going for. This is one layer, and you can see how dark, how much coverage this got with a nicer, um, with more a brush that's loaded with a little more paint versus the brush that just got it a little too wet, and then you're like, oh man, it's a little too thin. So then you have to do multiple layers. It's people work multiple layers with a very thin brush. It's cool to do that if you're really trying to be careful with certain areas as far as like the buildup of the hue or the contrast, or if you're blocking in your tones or your colors. I think that's another thing that'd be cool to practice, is how to start blocking in your colors. And what I mean is by thinking, okay, the separation between the pants, the belts, there's like another belt strap, and then there's a jacket, like block in those colors, and then work on highlights, work on blending, work on the recesses, all the darker where the shadow points are. When you zenithal, it's nice to have this reference where it's like, where's the light source? So when you see a miniature and you think, okay, well, I put the layers on there, and it still looks very flat. It looks very two-dimensional, but yet this is a four-dimensional object. It's got the curves around. Then reference back to the lighting and see where those highlights are. Take a picture of your miniature and pick a golden angle of it and see, all right, I need to put highlights in this area, or whatever the case may be. And that always is a good reference, just to kind of have multiple angles of whatever you're painting. When you're playing with a tabletop miniature, it's not a display miniature, so you have every angle to think about that people are looking at. So it's whether the people that are hanging out at the table, they see a certain angle, your opponent sees another, like the front angle, and you're looking at the back view of your miniature. The light sources will change, but if you think about it, it's only, you gotta determine where it's gonna be as far as your highlights. You could pull all the highlights around the full, you could say, okay, with the light source being right above it, or whether it's shining on the side, it's really up to you. Like if it's a lightsaber per se, versus, all right, the very top is going to be the light source of all my miniatures. That way it doesn't matter where you look at your miniature, it's going to be the highlight consistency is going to be there. The glare effects are pretty cool too. That's why I like these guys. They have the goggles. This would be a good time to build up the consistency of the pigment. Now is when I want to kind of go lighter and on the how much the ink is on the brush. Thinking about where I'm going to put my reflections, the glares, the different tones. Get it ready for like the white highlights. You can build up a corner if it's a very tight area when you're painting by stippling at an angle, and I've been a big fan of that, especially with dry brushing. Get in a good habit whenever I know most of the guys you guys already paint. I'm not trying to teach you how to paint. I'm just trying to, I guess, pick my brain, pick your brain. How do you guys do it? What's your recipe? What's your steps? But I had a bad habit when I started painting, not twisting the brush to reshape the tip. And now each time I go in to reload the brush, I'm always keeping that in mind, rotating the brush. If I go to clean it off in the water pot, I'm cleaning it, rotating. So I'm like literally doing this to it, just so that I know that if I do need to go back into a different color or the same color, I will always keep in mind that the brush tip is going to be working with me, not against me. And I'm not really going direct with the tip. I'm always working at angles. Sometimes I just leave my paint hand steady and I'm moving this hand around. So this thing's like the gimbal in the camera, if you can imagine. And I'm just kind of controlling my range with my paintbrush. I mean, it's not much of range that we need, especially if you're working in tight areas. You're just doing a lot of this tiny stippling and layering and painting. So I just, whatever I'm comfortable with, whatever you're comfortable with as far as range, I always keep in mind of that also. So a good way to think when you approach a miniature, certain areas, I'm like, all right, I know from here to here, I have a solid, I'm comfortable to cover this area, and I know I won't be shaky. I won't have like, especially if you're highlighting edges, if you have a certain range that you're working with, then you also have to figure out what range you can draw a straight line, with your brush. So I can tell myself what my range is as far as I'm comfortable whenever I'm working in this area. You've got a circular portion of the model. I know that from here to here I can control the brush. This is my range, and then I can slowly start blending without, like they say, getting out of the lines. And if I'm blending backwards, the same concept. Keeping in mind that even if you're working the same color, I mean, it does dry. Pigment's dry, so it's good to just kind of keep going back in, dilute it, thin it out a little more, and then just kind of keep working where you're at. I'm just covering the helmet areas, doing the the red stripe around it, and this is just like a feathering technique. I'm not really worried about doing one pass lines. I want to make sure it's just the coverage and they're bright so that they stand out on the table. This is kind of like the beacon for the model, where's who. So every other Wednesday we're gonna try to do some sort of paint stream, and I'll be jumping on that, and it'd be cool to maybe get a few guys to throw some suggestions or join in, have a little group going for a paint party. Also, if there's maybe like a faction or a character that would be cool to live paint, just let me know. Or a faction, if you say paint this faction. we got the red stripes on all the helmets. I feel like now we can maybe do a little bit of dry brushing and then we can call it for the session. So I have, let me see here, this is just a standard dry brush. You could find these as makeup brushes. I'm gonna get maybe a gunmetal color. Gin. I agree to disagree, but that'd be fun. We'll get a gin aerosol in there. This is the Pro Acryl Silver Metallic. Now this has metal flake in it, so if you are gonna use metallics, make sure you use a different water pot. We're about to finish it after this, so but if you are gonna continue, make sure not to contaminate. I'll make sure it looks it's the purest it can go. Contaminate the water pot you're dipping in, and then you go back with your brush, because then you're gonna put flakes all over your miniature, maybe in areas you don't want to. And when we do the dry brushing, sometimes I'll just kind of absorb whatever's in the paper towel. And I'll use something that's non-porous. I feel like a lot of people's points are going to get increased. It's insane. What's the date that they announced for the drop? It's sometime December, correct? They're gonna do the point drop right before LVO, watch. They're gonna just drag it out, and then you guys get to Vegas, and then that night of, they're gonna say, all right, the drop is here. I like this gunmetal look. Yeah, you guys should try this Pro Acryl. Silver Metallic is the color. I'm sure you can buy a single bottle of it, but for dry brushing, especially once you layer, I think I used, which black? I actually used the Air ink from Vallejo. It's their just standard black, and I like that it was, it's not as thick as the usual like Citadel black and things like that, but when you dry brush, you see it just, man, it layers so easy. I'm barely even applying pressure. It'd be cool to time lapse a miniature getting painted. The only hard part is when you're dry brushing in an area next to a face and you have metallic pigment. You don't want to get glitter all over this guy's well, this is I guess the glitter will work. They could wear glitter makeup, man. Very light dabbing pressure. I'm not really even trying to brush it too hard. And this is this brush is pretty flat. I've seen some that have like the makeup brushes that are curved, Those are, I think, a little more harder because you have to be aware of where those edges are and when the brush will actually be in contact with the miniature. But this one being flat, you can kind of just work the angles, turning it around and almost creating texture while you're doing it. That's the cool thing about dry brushing. So once I think the pigment's pretty powerful. It's very vibrant. So if I'm gonna reload the brush, I'm gonna come back into the same area, but maybe feather it out a little further from the center pot wherever the ink was before, just so I know that I can see it drying. Come back into this, to our little palette, and you can see exactly where it'll be. And you can create texture, like scratches and things like that, by just rotating the brush as you're going to apply it. So let me see if I can get a little closer. So I'm just gonna, it's like rotating it in a sense, gives it like a natural scratch look. Once you see that the brush is, you gotta kind of be aware of the pressure you're applying. If you see that it's running out of that metallic look, or the pigment is kind of, it's already kind of fallen off the tip, you can start applying little by little, a little more pressure, but that does spread the bristles, so you kind of have to be mindful of that. You could always dry brush and then throw a wash over that just to muddy down if it's a little too shiny for your taste. You can always just kind of, these guys have the little bit mortars on them, or the bombs, the grenades. You can dry brush with those also. If you don't shake the bottle well enough, it comes out a little too liquidy, and that's kind of like you could see whatever they use as far as their formula to create that silver effect. They put blues, they put flakes of the tiny little flakes of metal, the powder, and so you have to make sure it's well shaken, not stirred. Alright, let me see if I can show you. I mean, it just goes on there so easy. Like I mentioned, the Star Wars illustrations where they have that nothing's too shiny, it's just kind of like brushed gunmetal. It's kind of one of those things that to make that effect. I'm a big fan of Andor. Even though that was the last episode, I kept checking to see if they would just secretly surprise us with another, or I should say bless us with another episode, because, man, that was a good show. That build up was crazy. of the scene where he's evading the big Star Destroyer. And he just like, yeah, hold on, let me get the codes. Gone. It's one single ship just taking out TIE fighters. Trying to get in focus here. You guys can see the shine is very subtle. It's not like a chrome. That's why I thought this would be a perfect mix for the gunmetal brush. I don't know if I would use this for something that I want to be very reflective, but for something, if you're trying to go for that true metallic, this would be a go-to. If you're trying to go a non-metallic, then definitely use blues and some blacks. You're just gonna have to watch the episode to find out. Cassian comes guns blazing, strapped up on an ATRT. Yeah, we have to get a picture of your Han Solo body conversion. That thing was awesome. It's a pretty cool figure. And we need to get a paint session together. I would love to collab with get a model and just collab on it. Have somebody paint, I don't know, a few base tones and then, or a few layers, and then I'll add some flair to it and then just go back and forth. That'd be pretty cool to do that. See how the miniature ends up looking once everybody spends, I don't know, it's kind of like what they do. You know, you start a drawing and then somebody else adds something to the drawing and then another person will add it, and in the end you just have this big canvas. It'd be cool to do that with the miniature. Let's kit bash. You have a bunch of body parts in the back of the room of miniatures that didn't make it. We can kit bash something. Alright guys, looks like we did an hour 30 of painting. I appreciate you guys hanging out while we just chill, paint, listen to some tunes. Thanks to the Lost Legion for letting me take over for the segment. So, like I said, this will be every other Wednesday after game night Wednesdays or Wednesday game nights. But I might pop in from time to time and just do like a random live paint. Like I said, we have this proxy that I'm gonna paint, and it'd be pretty cool to do a live of this and do the make my Mando shiny challenge. I still want to see what other chrome effects we can do with different paints. I've got the different things I'd like to try, so I think that'd be cool to just do, whether it's aluminum colors, the dark new aluminum, the steels. And I got this AK interactive chrome I've been wanting to try out. This thing looks mean, and I want to use that for the Mandos. So there's this guy here, he's primed, ready to go. But I definitely I'm on the quest to see what would be the best metallic. This is more so chrome, which is not this. It's actually a marker. It's these liquid chrome markers, and I just popped the top. I took the top off, poured it down, diluted it with an airbrush, a flow solution, and I just blasted this with the chrome and got this cool effect with it. But I want to try this AK Interactive. I've heard a lot of cool things about it. So for that, I will be painting a bunch of spoons, which are primed and ready to go, and I want to see what turnouts we will have between the different metallics. I think that'd be pretty cool to see, which I think this extreme metal might be pretty close to what that liquid did. So I have a few more stuff to figure out with that, but let's see. Alright, so on that note, thanks again guys for hanging out, and I will post the better pictures I can of these guys as far as the progress we did tonight. And I feel like I just want to keep going with it, so maybe another Wednesday we can either pick another miniature to paint. I could wrap these up and just kind of post the pictures of what they started like and to finish, and contact Lost Legion, let us know as far as ideas, or if we should, I'm like to get a little paint night going and stream that, keep up to date with certain news. I know, check into the Discord, there's a lot of stuff going on in there, game nights, and we'll see you guys around. Keep that paint on the brush, and thanks for letting me host it. I'll see you guys around.